This is Indie Rocks Radio. Discover something new.
They say I live in the past and I'm not going to argue. But I sat in the pub with parents.
Good evening. This evening on They Say I Live in the Past, I'm joined by Cathal Coughlan, co-founder and singer of acclaimed 80s, 90s pop rock groups Microdisney and Fatima Mansions, and widely believed to be one of Ireland's most revered singer-songwriters. And with that build-up, Cathal, good evening.
Good evening, Dermot.
Thanks for joining us. So the idea of this is you select a number of songs, we talk about them, they give an insight into your music, hopefully. Just before we start with the first track, how do you generally come across music today?
With difficulty, to be honest. I mean, there's no problem with coming across loads of it, but remembering things that have impressed you is more difficult now than it's ever been before, because the old aperture has gotten so wide, you know. It's principally still traditional radio for me, that I pick up on things that I don't know anything about, you know. I do use social media, and the odd thing comes at me through there. The monthly magazines are just, you know, so chock full of things that I never know what to really fasten onto there. Some online blog type outlets, you know, I take them pretty serious.
Your first track is Harlem from the band Suicide, and it was released in 1980, which was also the year you were forming Microdisney. Any particular reason for this track?
Well, it comes from the second Suicide album, which is just a really terrific record, and is the point where their kind of really primitive approach met some of the more interesting kind of electronic songs that were coming out of, for example, Germany, you know. Harlem, I used to hear a lot when staying with a friend of mine in quite a rough part of Dublin, which really was rough. Maybe not as rough as the rougher parts of Harlem had been in the 1970s when Suicide were hanging out there, but nevertheless, it has this kind of really threatening big city feeling about it. You know, you feel like you're being baked in the sun, and things are going on around you that you don't really quite understand, and you better watch out.
Big black city. Big black city. Big black city. Harlem, Harlem, baby. Harlem, Harlem, baby. Harlem, Harlem, baby. Hey, 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 hey. Mr. Mafia Man, I'm gonna be good. Harlem, Harlem, baby, baby, baby. Harlem, 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 baby, baby. Harlem, 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 baby, baby. Mr. Policeman, I'm gonna bad news. Harlem, Harlem, baby, baby. Harlem, Harlem, baby, baby. Harlem, Harlem, baby, baby, big black city. Yeah, Mr. Pitman, he's the king. Mr. Pitman, he's the king. Mr. Pitman, he's the king. Mr. Pitman's the king of the streets. come on. He's sucking like a shark. He's sucking like a shark. He's sucking like a shark. He's sucking like a shark.
That is Harlem from Suicide's second album back in 1980, the choice of my guest, Cathal Coughlan. And Cathal, the second track we're going to look at is from your second solo album, and it was released in 2010, Black River Falls. Do you see yourself as a solo artist when you release a solo album?
Somewhat. I mean, yes, insofar as I'm the only one who's present for the whole process, but not so much in the sense of it being this kind of star vehicle or whatever you like. I mean, I don't feel that different about doing things now than when I was in full-time bands. I'm always trying to get people around me who can help out. You know, I can't imagine doing an entire record that's literally me on my own. So I'm always seeking to collaborate.
And is that in the, even before you start recording at stages, will you be collaborating and then into a studio, or is it more you're working it yourself and then with a kind of a nearly formed idea you head into the studio?
More like the latter. I mean, they're often very well formed, just so that I'm not completely at the mercy of circumstances. No, you know, it's not so much people that I have a problem with. It's the fact that the circumstances can change so radically. Just, you know, if there's a power cut or something, you know, that you want to have something to fall back on. So I tend to get things pretty well worked up, and especially now when you really need to keep from being in a studio any more than you can help. And it's really unfortunate because lots of great studios have gone out of business. But with everything else that's happened at the selling end of music, you just have to ration the time very carefully.
And this track from the album Black River Falls, Bacon Singer. Why have you chosen this one?
Well, I think it's one of the more successful things I've done artistically, as a solo artist. It's one of a number of songs I've written that are just about traveling and the experience of traveling and all the feelings about yourself and about the outside world that can bring up. And as usual, I can't resist the temptation to over dramatize a little bit, but that's really kind of all it's about. And James Woodrow's guitar on this kind of recalls some of the playing on Joni Mitchell's Hejiro, which is one of my favorite albums, and the drumming is great. So yeah, I have fond recollections of it.
Sunset on a fast train, sunrise in the mountains, platform, God woman, swaggers and chews gum. Here might be happy, or so I imagine. Travel in thick disguises, travel in lethal gases, travel in search of payment, travel in self-abasement. I was no Presley, wrong kind of damaged, and la said the la said the la said the bacon singer, la said the la said the la said the bacon singer. Small holes in high-end plate glass radiate a pale web. Short skirts surround a green truck. Uzi, Ray-Ban, Armani, name brands redistributed. It is Lime Pit season, and la said the la said the la said the bacon singer, la said the la said the la said the bacon singer. Let me dream your dreams, you'll timeshare my nightmare, and la said the la said the la said the bacon singer, la said the la said the la said the bacon singer.
That is the Bacon Singer, Cathal Coughlan, taken from Black River Falls 2010. And Cathal has joined me this evening for the section called They Say I Live in the Past. Cathal, what does it feel like to listen to yourself? And is that something you do? Do you revisit some of your
I
music?
tend to have to do so on a fairly regular basis, but outside of that, I really don't. I mean, the only exception being where it's something that I really was disappointed with, and I want to kind of remind myself of the trap that I might have fallen into, or try and get a new perspective on what I didn't do right. But more often than not, I don't. I just try to keep moving.
Your next track, Flight of the Pelican, I've read something you've written recently actually about this track, but Lal Waterson, do you want to tell us a little bit about this track?
Well, Lal Waterson and Oliver Knight were mother and son duo. I mean, Lal is now deceased. She was from quite a famous Yorkshire singing family, the Watersons, from the kind of Hull, Scarborough, Robin Hood's Bay area, who collectively and individually did a lot of great work. Continue to do so. The later generation, especially. Lal would have been Eliza Carthy's aunt, for example. But one of the last things she did before her unfortunately early decease was an album called Once in a Blue Moon. And Flight of the Pelican, I think, is just a really extraordinary song. There's a measuredness about it coming from the guitar, and Lal just kind of waits over the top of it patiently and delivers these messages, which we're not really sure what she means exactly, but there's something really profound in there about perhaps recollection of the early days of being a parent and how that changed her life and maybe caused her to subsume her own needs into those of her family. Possibly, I don't, even after all these years of listening to it, I don't really know. But that's part of the magic. It's that tension between Oliver's guitar and her mode of delivery. It's just endlessly fascinating to me.
Saw the flight of the pelican. Speak to me words, don't give me no fancy meanings. I never knew I was needing. We who dreamed young and were silent this autumn. I need the love peace brings. I need to feel easy in my need. I need to feel naturally greedy. I need the space for my feet. I need to feel safe while I sleep. I need the love peace brings, and then I've no need. We who dreamed young and were silent this autumn, in the last throes of an upstartled crow, saw the flight of the pelican. Speak to me words, don't give me no fancy meanings. I never knew I was needing. We who dreamed young and were silent this autumn. I need the love peace brings. I need to feel easy in my need. I need to feel naturally greedy. I need the space for my feet. I need to feel sleep and eat the love peace brings, and then I've no need. We who dreamed young and were silent this autumn, your children's rights have gone.
Well, it does all those things you were talking about there, and you described it much better than I could, but the kind of darkness, the light, the music and the voice so important in there as well. And lots of people over the years have talked about your voice in comparison to other people and so on. Do you recognise how distinctive your voice is? It might seem like a stupid question, but you can hear you and you know it's you. Is that something you've worked on or something you've always had?
It's something I've been unable to avoid, and it's just one of those things. It isn't something I'm particularly proud or in awe of, to be honest. It's just part of my my condition in the world, if you like, and it hasn't always been exactly a blessing. It's a bit Marmite, maybe, I've been told, but it's what I've got.
Next track, this interesting to note as well. This band formed in 1980 as well. Right, my pronunciation is going to be awful here. Go for it, Cathal. You can do it much better than I can.
It's Einstürzende Neubauten. This track is called Nagorno-Karabakh. It's actually quite a simple message that's being conveyed in the lyrics. For those who don't follow the politics of the South Caucasus, Nagorno-Karabakh is a disputed Armenian enclave inside of Azerbaijan. There have been a number of wars fought over it over the last few decades, most recently late last year, actually. It's just a high-up enclave within another nation-state, you might say. And what the lyric is just conveying here is the sense of restfulness that there can be at the heart of a conflict space, or how smug and self-satisfied a person can become in apparently the most threatening of situations. At least that's what I take from it anyway. And musically, I just think it's terrific. They Neubauten they still do. They use scrap metal as percussion instruments, and initially almost their entire sound consisted of that. They've put it in a sort of wider soundscape, in the last couple of decades of their existence, and I just think they do a tremendous job with a tense ballad, and this is one of those.
Nagorno-Karabakh. Vormals tiefe Wälder, Bergketten, vielleicht Eis. Eine messinggelbe Sonne verbricht ein Paradies. Meine Sys und Diastole, dazwischen der Moment. Getragen von den Vögeln, die hier zugange sind. In der Enklave meines Herzens, in der ich mich verliere. In Nagorno-Karabakh. Ich steig den Berg herunter, geh ins eine oder andere Tal. Es ist geflaggt in allen Farben, schwarze Raben fressen Pflaumen aus dem Baum. Ob die andere Stadt mich lieb hat, in der Enklave meiner Wahl, in der ich mich verberg, in Nagorno-Karabakh. Komm mich mal besuchen, ich hab unendlich Zeit und der Blick, der ist vom Feinsten über Wolken und die Stadt in Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, Nagorno-Karabakh.
Indie Rocks Radio.
Yeah, another beautiful, beautiful track you've chosen for us, Cathal. This is Dermot, and you're listening to me talk to Cathal Coughlan on a feature called They Say I Live in the Past, which is actually a lyric taken from a band called Sons of Southern Ulster, who are from Cavan originally. And the next track, Lisa O'Neill, is originally from Cavan as well, as far as I know. A track called England Has My Man.
Lisa kind of exemplifies, a wider trend in Irish music at the moment of rediscovering aspects of not just the strictly traditional music background, but less, seemingly less highbrow things like English language ballad singing in Ireland, and even some aspects of what the better parts of the show bands were doing, in years gone by. There's not as much worthiness about, and I think these young musicians are mastering aspects of various traditions and putting them to their own use. And obviously a number of people will know about Lankum, for example, who I think are really just tremendous, both as a group and as individuals. Lisa comes from the same strain as that, and there are other, Landless and Ye Vagabonds and various other people. England Has My Man really it's just one of those, you could say it was a trope of Irish song, of the person left behind mourning the immigrant, but she really has her own spin on it, and she sings about it in ways that wouldn't have been thought of 50 years ago, or they might have been thought of, but nobody would have necessarily ventured to do it. I think she's a really great writer.
England has my man, my body is cold. England so lucky, I'm not sure they know. I'm feeling bold with ideas of us. I don't see my baby near often enough. Now I am calmer than ever before. He opened the grand can of beautiful warmth. I waved my fears and I faced the chance. No one got near when we first danced. England has my man,
don't see my baby near often enough.
England Has My Man, Lisa O'Neill, from her 2014 album, Same Cloth or Not. And that mournful music towards the end there as well. We've got a track now by Luke Haines and Peter Buck, and we'll talk maybe a bit later about your collaboration with Luke Haines. This track called Jack Parsons. Can you tell us something about this, Cathal?
Well, it's some of Luke's best and most amusing lyric writing. He has numerous strengths, but his lyric writing is one that I really admire. It's a kind of a fractal view of this character called Jack Parsons, who was a self-taught jet propulsion scientist in California. I believe it was late 40s, early 50s. He had his wife and his little religion stolen from him by L. Ron Hubbard, who went on to found Scientology off the back of it. He was Aleister Crowley's official representative in North America, and he died in a mysterious accident involving high explosives in his garage. So this was a single from an album that Luke made with, in collaboration with Peter Buck, formerly of R.E.M., that came out last year.
So Luke Haines and Peter Buck, Jack Parsons.
Is anybody there?
Jack, 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 Jack,
Jack, Jack, Jack,
Jack Parsons walked on Mars, hiding in plain sight of a drunken journey in the bad moon glow. Jack Parsons, well hung by a dip so limey in the Pasadena moon of the Parsons nose. We got Elron in the OTO. Can you tell your wife to take off her clothes? We'll have a fumble in the hedgerow, baby. You see, rocket fuel makes me horny. Terra firma kinda bores me. I wanna be up there with the angels. I wanna fall back down to earth with the angels. Jack Parsons went to the stars on a firework and a prayer. Jack Parsons walked on Mars and he met God. Jack Parsons walks on Mars. Jack Parsons walks on Mars. Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons. I can't read, but I can talk to God, or a two-headed dog from Babylon, or elsewhere. Wu-Hung was a Chinaman with a rocket's flare, a red glare flare. He went up to the clouds. He didn't come down from there. Jack Parsons went to the stars on a firework and a prayer. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. He met God up there. Hey baby, come out tonight and walk with me to the light. Hey baby, come out tonight to the great walking in the sky. From the sky.
Like we're talking now, it may not now after you've said that, but you like to when you want it to straight away.
What about the voices? They sometimes say things in Mekons. Is that the voice now?
Yeah.
Is anybody there? How many voices are there?
Dirty Dick, Andrew Garner, and Stuart Phillips.
There's a tumble in your bedsit roll, the smell of fear as you go clear. Your bed is shaking, someone's moving the cupboard. I put it down to Captain Hubbard. Your middle child is screaming. She's either possessed or she's dreaming. She wants to be up there with the angels. She wants to fall back down to earth with the angels. Jack Parsons walked on Mars with a firework and a prayer. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. He met God up there. Jack Parsons went to the stars with a firework and a prayer. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. He met God up there. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. Jack Parsons walked on Mars. Jack Parsons.
How'd you go on?
Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons.
Discover something new with Indie Rocks Radio, Manchester's rising station.
Taken from Beat Poetry for Survivalists, an album that came out last year, and that is the choice of Cathal Coughlan, Luke Haines, Peter Buck album. Cathal is still with me. Mekons is your next choice. It's Ghosts of American Astronauts. Now, I've got a few people that have willingly given up their time to do these interviews, and one person you will be aware of, Ricky Deneen, has also chosen a Mekons track. Is it something to do with the influence back in Cork in those early days?
To some extent, I suppose. Yes, it does. You know, they're when they finally made their first album in 1979, I think it was. It was something we all played a lot in Cork. The Quality of Mercy is Not Stern, and we all subsequently got to know each other in London. I mean, Ricky would have done a lot of shows with the Three Johns and possibly the Mekons themselves as well, and Microdisney used to knock about with them, as you know, in various guises. But I think what I like about them so much is that they've, of all the post-punk acts, I mean, I know they existed in '77 as well, but of all the, most of their work was done subsequently, but they've kept it going continuously, and it's always interesting. Right up to 2020, they made a good album last year, and a really strange album that nobody else could have made. So, I felt they really ought to be included here. And one of the things I love about them is the words. It doesn't matter whether it's who's singing, whether it's Sally or Tom or John or any of the others. I mean, there is always this group personality that seems to come through in the words, which I rate very highly. I'm not that influenced by, the kinds of lyric writers that tend to get written up in the broadsheets so much, who are by and large people who could just as easily be producing literature. These kinds of things could only be song lyrics, and they illustrate the strength of the medium. It's encouraging to me.
Something you said there reminded me of something you said recently as well, or maybe a couple of years ago. This theory about rock musicians or musicians in general, that they can actually get better as they get older. You're a firm believer in that. To you, it matters that you're getting better as you get older as well, I imagine.
I can't really stand outside of myself enough to say whether it's something I'm achieving, but I think it can happen, and it's worth sticking around for if you're fortunate enough to be able to. I think it partly depends on what the artist is known for in the first place. If what you're known for is like 2-minute bursts of hormonal energy, then that may not go on happening into your 70s. For example, but it's a case of being in a medium that suits your life, and none of us can plan for that.
We definitely know that the Mekons have kept going. Right, this is Ghost of American Astronauts. Cathal Coughlan is my guest this evening on They Say I Live in the Past. And Cathal, you have a new album, your first album in 10 years, coming out this month in March. Why is it taking so long?
Well, the experience of putting out the last one was a bit chastening. It was as things were changing, in music fairly rapidly, and it wasn't altogether apparent that recorded music had any future whatsoever. If you want to be a decent human being, there are times you have to pay more attention to your personal life, and that also happened to me. And I was fortunate that my musical interest could be kept alive in the projects I was doing with other people, mainly as a singer. So I was doing theatre work in France and multi-artist shows in Ireland, things of that nature periodically, which kept my hand in and kept working on my voice and doing things that made me feel good. So I wasn't in any rush to commit to the whole process of doing a record for myself, which is the way it works now, for the vast majority of people, in fact. That was it. But, things shifted around during 2018-19, and I found I had material, and rather than doing a series of little hit-and-run actions, as I was calling them, circumstances dictated that it was probably better to just do the whole thing in one lot. So here it is as an album, essentially.
Yeah. Song of Co-Aklan. What's with the title? Is that a combination of your name?
Well, it is a kind of a truncation of my name. It's a rebranding exercise. It's the first stage of me rebranding, because I think we have to kind of get rid of a lot of our attachments to colloquialism and go for things that are just phonetic, and really just get with the program. Lehman Brothers, great institution, did such a lot of good in the world. But that stray H in the middle of their name, do you think they'd get off the ground today, as easily as they might have done in the early 20th century? I don't think so. So, that's the kind of thing I'm doing.
Right, we're going to take a track, Owl in the Parlour, from the new album. Owl in the Parlour, taken from Cathal Coughlan's new album, The Song of Co-Aklan. Are you happy with the album, Cathal?
Yeah, as much as I ever am, you know. I mean, time will tell. I mean, you have to get so close to them to get them finished. That objectivity kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, playing live is very important, obviously, to you as well. You played live a lot, obviously, back in the days. Is it something that stays interesting for you, or can it become a bit of a treadmill?
It doesn't so much become a treadmill as the wrong details begin assuming too much importance. I've never really come to a conclusion as to whether it's better to just confine it to special occasions or just push through the kinds of feelings you might have after the first couple of weeks. I mean, the longest I've ever had to go at one round was probably about 8 weeks, and that you just worry about minor physical details to do with your voice and that kind of thing to the exclusion of everything else, and you stop enjoying the travel and all of that. So it is a bit of an acid test, and you always find out a lot about the writing that you've done, how it could be better, and the way you sing and the way that could be better. So it's valuable.
Okay, right, we've got 2 tracks left. This next one is Brief Elevated Period from Wire. I suppose another group of musicians that have proven that they can keep going for over 40 years now. Why have you chosen this track?
Well, it might seem like I'm a real punk nostalgist from this selection, and I'm not. The reason I chose Wire is I've always admired, as with the Mekons, I've always admired the words. And to me, there's on at least one moment, and sometimes many more, on a Wire album, there's a sublime collision between really obtuse modernist words that Graham Lewis has written and the almost offhanded sing-song delivery of Colin Newman. And to me, that's a magic pop combination. That's why I keep going back to their work, and they're still really good.
Skipping the skiff in the typhoon season, hoping to change, in need of a hand. But not be confused by rhyme, nor reason, Indian queens, I don't know got the moves. The passenger matches the price, he's asking, embracing the modern, he now understands. It's a pivotal moment in an uncertain future, a pink leaf deal done on the Frankfurt Express. A short, elevated period. In 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 a short, elevated period.
Follow our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Indie Rocks UK, or our website, www.indierocks.co.uk.
Short elevated period, Wire, from their 15th studio album, Wire have been described as being utterly uncompromising in their art and their vision. Is that something, Cathal, you'd like said about you?
I suppose it might be nice, but making a virtue of that is not necessarily the same thing as being having it ascribed to you. You know, I mean, there's good uncompromising and there's mediocrity. So really, I don't know. It isn't something I aim for in particular.
We'll just leave that to us, and we'll tell you what we think. Right, we're on the last track, Ankle Shackles from King Creosote. This track from 2012, I think.
Yes, it is. I discovered it probably about 4 or 5 years after that, and it was wafting through an outdoor PA system at a funeral. I have to admit, it was at a funeral. Kenny Anderson's voice was just kind of, I couldn't hear any musical accompaniment. It was just his voice, this really quite eerie kind of vocal ornamentation that he does throughout this song. It's really beautiful, but it's in the nature of a kind of a mantra. It's like a 6 or 8 line long mantra, which just builds in intensity and then dips again and builds and dips. I don't know of another piece of music quite like it, to be honest. It's, partly down to the situation that I experienced it in, but it has stood the test of time for me. It's something I do come back to, and a bit like the Lal Waterson or work by her daughter, Mary Waterson. It's in a way, it's kind of a bit indecipherable and ineffable, and that's its charm, you know.
Right. Thank you, Cathal. It's been a pleasure to spend this hour or so with you this evening, and I do thank you for that. Good luck with the new album, and I know it's going to be really well received from what I've heard of it already anyway. And we're going to leave everyone this evening with King Creosote and Ankle Shackles. Good night.
Thanks, Dermot. Cheers.
Sometimes I need left alone to deal with them. So what if she's one of these things? Is it on your conscience? She's more than a flame. And is it true you've placed your curse upon my newest bit of strange? And is there a new knot being tied in your longest piece of string? No, nothing good can come of ankle shackles, a ball and chain. No, nothing good will come to you. If my arrest is as good as change, sometimes I need left alone to deal with them. So what if she's one of these things? Sometimes I need left alone to deal with her. So she's one of these things. Sometimes I need left alone to deal with her. So she's one of these Sometimes I need left alone to deal with her. So she's one of these things. Sometimes I need love alone to deal with her. So she's one of these
They say I live in the past. I can make the future. Like Lundy, like Catman do.